Margot, good morning. It's good to speak to you. Let's just ask a few questions at this point in the seminar. Why is it, after all these years, is Shackleton being recognized and connects so well with today's business world?
Well, I think in 1997, a book called Into Thin Air, which told the story of the disastrous 1996 season on Mount Everest, sparked a renewed interest in adventures in extreme climates. And then in 1998, Stephanie Caparel wrote a very influential article in the Wall Street Journal that stirred up a long-simmering interest in Sir Ernest Shackleton's endurance expedition. I think what we see in him today, though, in the larger issue, is that a better educated and diverse workforce demands better and more effective leadership skills. And what we have in Shackleton's way is a very people-centered style of leadership that is effective in bringing together a diverse group to work toward a major goal. It's especially well suited to crisis situations and shows that people can accomplish extraordinary things when they are properly led and inspired.
What were the vital characteristics that Shackleton displayed that had such an impact on the motivation of his men?
There are four cornerstones to Shackleton's leadership style. He led by example. Nobody on the Endurance worked harder than he did, and his men knew that he was 100% committed to doing the best job possible. Secondly, he worked hard to keep up morale. He kept his finger on the pulse of his crew and rapidly responded to any breaks in morale. Thirdly, he talked to his men. He knew who they were, and he knew what they were thinking. And I believe that this was the glue that kept the team together throughout a life-threatening ordeal that lasted for over a year and a half. And most important of all, he maintained a positive attitude even at their darkest moments. If he had been any less optimistic about their situation, they never would have been heard from again.
What impressed you most about Shackleton doing your research and writing? I know you went to Antarctica. You've been to the Scott Polar Research Institute, and this goes back to 1984. During all that research, what is it in particular?
I was impressed by the way that Shackleton grew throughout his career. So many times people make the mistake of thinking that that leadership is an inborn trait and it comes naturally to some people. But it was clear to me from the research that I did that Shackleton worked at his leadership skills, and they weren't strictly intuitive. He worked very hard to find a way to lead his group through the crises they went through. And that's what I find most admirable about him, that he constantly challenged himself to work harder and be smarter and to find a new way to lead this group effectively through this crisis.
In your book, at the end of each chapter, you have various interviews with people who have also been influenced by Shackleton's leadership, and some very interesting people indeed. Can you tell us how you chose them and how you came across those very interesting people?
Well, we were tremendously fortunate. It was a remarkable example of serendipity, how we came across these people. At the time we were writing the book, I was buying a co-op in New York City, and at the meeting I had with the Board of Trustees, somebody handed me a magazine that had an article about Shackleton, and it mentioned the Secretary of the Navy, Richard Danzig's interest in Shackleton, and from that magazine article we contacted him. I happened to be at a party in Seattle for an auction of polar books, and there I met Jonathan Karpov, who had been very interested in studying the difference between successful and failed expeditions to the polar regions. My favorite example of all, though, was Mike Dale, who was a wonderful contribution to the book. At an early meeting at our publishers, there were a number of people in the room who were very enthusiastic about the topic, and the conversation went very rapidly, and with people making all sorts of contributions. And at one point, our editor mentioned that his secretary had a friend whose boss used Shackleton as a role model and as to inspire his sales force. And the thought that went through, and all we knew about it was that about this man was that he worked for an automobile company in New Jersey, and the thought that went through my mind was that he owned a dealership. And in fact, he turned out to be the head of Jaguar North America, and that was Mike Dale, who had been almost a lifelong admirer of Shackleton's, and he was a wonderful contribution to the book. Well, my interest in Sir Ernest Shackleton has taken me virtually around the world, from Aberdeen in Scotland to Antarctica, from Australia to Argentina, and it's introduced me to all sorts of wonderful people. And I hope you find the book and the story as gratifying and as interesting as I have. Thank you very much, and I'm thrilled that you're doing this.
All the best. Happy writing.
Thanks very much, Rick.
Bye.
Bye-bye.